Hello everybody. Nice to be here, and thank you very much for giving us your time and joining us virtually to have a very interesting discussion today. You will see that we have incredible guests that are going to speak about very interesting subjects today. First and foremost, I just want to make a small introduction. My name is Alex. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Stefanini Infinite, part of the Stefanini Group. And pharmaceutical and pharma industry, also healthcare industry, are one of our highest priorities right now. It's one of the industries that we are really experienced in, and we like to serve in all the ways possible, and also help the final, let's say, beneficiary of this, which are the patients. One of the key discussions right now, which is very hot in the industry, is this entire discussion about patient centricity, right? Patient centricity in the context of digitalization and decentralization of trials, especially in the whole, let's say, pandemic and COVID context. And since this is a very hot topic, I'm very glad to introduce our guest today. I'm going to start with Dr. Susanna Corritori. She's president at Corritori Consulting. Susanna is a MD with a master's degree in pharmacology and toxicology and PhD in neurosciences. Wow. She completed her postdoctoral fellowship at the Department of Neurosurgery at USC, California. And she has over 30 years of experience. And in these last 30 years, Dr. Corritori has held various positions of increasing leadership responsibilities in biopharmaceutical industry, contributing to several successful drugs approval. So really great expert. Welcome, Susanna.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me, and it's a great pleasure to be part of discussion of a very important topic in the context of clinical trials and drug development.
Thank you for joining us. Our next guest, Nagesh Yadav. Nagesh is Director of Digital Innovation and Transformation for Life Sciences at Stefanini. He has more than 15 years of experience across the pharma value chain in multiple roles like business development, client partner, and organizations like Syntel, LabAnswer, and Accenture. His effort is to help organizations with solutions for faster time to patient and better care. I personally share a lot of common values with Nagesh, and I'm really happy to work together with him in a lot of clients and opportunities within our group. Welcome, Nagesh.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be part of this exciting, interesting discussion.
And thank you for being here. And last but not least, I want to introduce Avik Pal. Avik is a CEO and co-founder of ClinioPs, and he's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. To tell you a bit about ClinioPs, which I think it's a very interesting company with a very interesting vision and concept, it is basically a data science company for the life science industry. And basically, it supports digital clinical trials by leveraging AI, mobile, analytics, cloud, IoT, sensors, and connected devices. So basically, it's making you future-proof. Welcome, Avik.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
So before we start, I just want to make a short introduction. As we all know, especially in the world today, we have a lot of challenges because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19, and because of the way the world has changed recently. In all industries, we have to find new ways of adapting our processes, our businesses, and everything that we do to this new reality, which apparently is here to stay. The pharmaceutical industry, which we are very close to, is also going through a lot of changes. And we really understand that pharma industry doesn't have, let's say, the freedom that, I don't know, retail or automotive or other industries have to leverage the latest innovations or, let's say, digital solutions. And we really understand that, and we are 100% behind the pharma companies to help them change with the speed at which they need to do this in today's world. So I just wanted to mention this because we have to keep in mind that because of the current context, a lot of the businesses need to understand that the consumers are more sensitive, and all of us, right, we are doing this from home. We could have been together right on the stage and having this this discussion in a live panel, but we are doing this from home. change is everywhere, and pharma companies have to change as well, regardless of the limitations given by compliance, regulatory, and so forth. And they have to do this faster than they were used to. So without going further in the context, because we are all well aware of it, I just want to ask you some questions, guys. The first question, and I want to address this question first to Susanna. What is, in your view, the current state and challenges in clinical trials for patients, Susanna?
Well, definitely the main challenge is the currently ongoing COVID-19 pandemics. There are challenges in clinical trials concerning and involving COVID-19 patients, but more importantly, patients and participants for non-COVID-19 clinical trials. And we all know that a number of trials and most of the non-COVID-19 trials were either put on hold or are going very, very slow. And the program timelines and business timelines had to change and readjust because of that. Simply because the mobility of the patients as well as the clinical research community is restricted, depending on the geographical region. So it's not easy to conduct clinical trials in the context as they used to be before. That's one of the major challenges, but also how to, even when the patients are able to come to the clinical research side, how to provide consistency in compliance to the scheduled visits and measurements, risk of getting infected with COVID-19, discontinuing from. There are many serious real world obstacles right now.
What is also your view about this, Avik? How do you see the current state and challenges of the clinical trials?
Right. No, I mean, totally agree with what Susanna just mentioned. I see, patients need treatment, right? Healthcare is not optional. So, pandemic or no pandemic, we need to make sure that this continues, this goes on, right? That requires patients going to the hospital, doctors and patients interacting. It's a very in-person thing, right? It's a very high-touch industry, right? You feel the pulse, you feel the heartbeat, you feel the patient, right? Now, unfortunately, in the context of pandemic, that has become difficult. This high touch is, it's not that, social distancing. How do you, touch the patient, feel the patient, mask, gloves, PPP kits and all that stuff. So that makes it difficult, social distancing, travel ban, restrictions, all that, right? So I think that's where, the high tech kind of comes in, right? Not as a rescue, but just as an enabler, right? So the high touch is not going anywhere. I think the high touch and high tech kind of needs to come together, to collaborate, to work together, to coexist, and then help the patients, the continuity of the care, right? So I think it's exciting times, and I think we'll see more and more of this patient centricity, to ensure that a lot of these things can still be done remotely, but without compromising on the patients should not feel like left out or left behind or not being able to help the care, because as I said, healthcare is not optional. You need to make sure that you get the care. So.
Yeah. That's right. And I would like to add more to what just Avik said. We will all have to change in order to provide non-COVID-19 trials and development of medications for non-COVID conditions to go on. Otherwise, we are going to, and we already, as a community, whole world paying price for not allowing and having access to useful medications and medical checkups, and overall medical care is in a very, very, very particular state right now. It needs to change.
It is, and we need to be aware of this in everything that we do, both from the pharma company perspective and from our perspective that support them. Nagesh, I also want to ask you something. Why patient centricity is so important, and can you also tell us a bit about its benefits?
Sure. So patient centricity, as you see, other industries are moving towards customer centric. In the similar way, organizations are moving towards more patient centric. they are more focused on outcomes. Patient centricity is important because the outcomes improve, the patient care is improved, the ROI is better, there is better engagement. And the study was done by economic intelligence, where they did a study of 4,000 trials of phase 2 and phase 3. They saw that 87% of the trials which were patient-centric had 87% of approval and success rate, against conventional trials which were not patient-centric. They had a success rate of 67%. Also, the same study showed that the patient recruitment time is a lot. Sponsors and CROs spend a lot of time investment on patient recruitment. But when the trials were patient-centric, it literally took 50% of the time, half of the time, to recruit patients and engage patients for the trials. So that's the reason why patient centricity is important. Pharma companies can improve the success rate of approvals. They can improve the outcomes. They can increase the patient care and engagement, right from R&D to commercial and beyond.
Yeah, so numbers speak for themselves. So obviously, this is the right way to go. But since it's so important, I want to ask each of you, so all the three of you, if you can help us and the audience understand what is patient centricity, because a lot of people use it. Obviously, it's a buzzword right now in our industry. So I would like each of you to, how would you describe patient centricity in your view? We can start with the lady, of course.
Thank you. Well, patient centricity can be understood in several different contexts. Specifically for the purpose of our gathering today, patient centricity is all about clinical research and clinical trial conduct and collection of the data is having the patient as a focus, wherever that patient is in the world, geographically, physically, which is very different from the currently still ongoing concept. Patients go wherever the clinical research site as a converging point is geographically. So it's all about providing opportunity patient to be participating in clinical research, regardless of geographical location, regardless of any other circumstances. But also patient centricity is about collecting real time and real world data to define overall experience with a particular treatment, with a particular drug, to support and optimize drug development. So there are many important layers there that as an outcome should improve the accessibility of development of accessible medications to patients.
Thank you very much.
Just to add to that, I mean, the clinical trials industry has evolved over the years, right? Several decades. Initially, it was more like the sponsors designing the protocols, which suits, or makes it easy for the sponsors and the trial team and all the stuff. And patient was not really at the center, right? So the trial was designed, and patient has to follow that, ensure that they need to go, they need to sit there for hours, and for some procedure, and then come back. So I think as the industry started moving on, I mean, we found some challenges to it, dropout rates and stuff like that, recruiting patients becoming difficult, outreach becoming difficult, diversity becoming difficult. So how can we kind of reach to the patients and to the trial of the patient, at the comfort from wherever they are? Then, so that's, I think that shift in the mindset has taken a good step forward, and now we see more patient centricity as part of the trial design itself. So that's, I think, where we need to start, which is at the design stage. We need to keep patient in mind more and more, and ensure that it's designed in a way where patient is at the center and left and right, right? Yeah. I don't want to digress from this topic, but maybe I want to take it to the next step, that patient centricity, of course, is first to start with, but we should not also lose context of the entire study team, right? So the CRAs, the monitors, and others. The monitors, for example, in the traditional model, monitors need to travel to all these sites, 50 sites around the world for, let's say, a phase 3 global trial. That's difficult. There's still, travel ban, restrictions, all that stuff, social distancing. So how can we ensure that, remote source data verification or remote monitoring can be done, right? Digital real-time data, digital data. So it basically expands on the concept of patient centricity and take it to like human centricity, if I may, right? Everybody who participates in research are, safe and secure, right? And research still continues. There's no disruption. So come COVID or no COVID. Yes, yeah.
That is right. Right now, we are witnessing a creation of mobile research teams that go wherever the patient is, to patient's home, residence, and collect the data, make sure that everything is taken care of, or certain things can be done remotely. So it's really not just a patient going to, it's the team going to the patient.
Absolutely. Great points to by Vic and Susanna. Just to add, patient-centric trials are the ones in which the patient is more involved, right from R&D to commercial and beyond, through patient advocacy. Advisory groups are involved, sponsors are in the study plan design. Sponsors have the advisory and advocacy group members when they design the trial. Again, the patient is more informed in patient-centric trials about the study, the disease, what are the endpoints, and so forth. And there is more transparency and trust there in a patient-centric trial as he is more informed. And then it is providing, as Susanna mentioned, equitable access beyond, regardless of the patient profile, geography, or economic background. And at the end, last but not the least, it's more about outcomes, as Susanna mentioned, more data from the real world, how the patient is feeling, what are the outcomes, is quality of life and comfort. So that is what a patient-centric trial or study is all about.
So just to summarize, and very good answers, guys, because to put it simple, we need from the design phase to start first understanding the patient and build the entire design of the trial around the patient with all the layers involved, both from the team, from our side and the company side, and also the patient in his or her own environment. So we need to intrude as less as possible and get as much information as possible in its most, let's say, natural and real life state, right? To summarize. So basically, I was saying yesterday, what we need to do is first understand, so we get the data, and our purpose is to help the pharmaceutical companies in the relation with the patient to turn the data into feelings, understand the feelings, and then turn the feelings back into data. That is our
That's the patient experience. And actually, US FDA issued recently this summer in June a guidance about the patient experience, and that's the regulatory definition of patient centricity, its overall experience, and who can collect the data and what kind of a data can be collected, when, how, where, all of these things. So it also started translating into regulatory guidelines that will greatly help pharmaceutical companies to optimize their drug development.
So I just want to add something also to the conversation. I'm a true believer that the best implementation of technology is the one where you don't realize technology is there. So when you don't see the technology is correctly implemented. So this is like a, let's say, a vision of the entire discussion. So we have started to touch a bit a very interesting point, which I wanted to ask you about, and we started to touch it. How can organizations rethink and redesign trials to be patient-centric? We already touched it a bit, but I want to ask you more details about this. Where do they begin to redesign and rethink this process?
Sure. So I would start, it starts at the C-suite to have patient-centric trials, and every employee is about and takes patient first, whoever is involved in conducting trials or across the organization to deliver care. It's about more about patient. In terms of trials, it should start around right from trial design, where the measurement KPIs, metrics, outcomes, journeys are all around patients' quality of life, his experience, and so forth. The points which we touched upon earlier. The voice of patient is also important before embarking on any trial. It should be done through surveys, engaging, as I mentioned earlier, advocacy advisory groups in the study designing and planning phase. And at the end of the day, it's patient experience and feeling and quality of life. How do you get that information from the real world? All right. It is all about data. How do you get data? It's all about digitization. As long as there is paper involved, or we understand, yes, there are some sites or some reasons paper is involved, but as much as digitization is done, there is better data points to understand this patient outcomes and real world evidence. And as you see in the current pandemic situation, patients cannot go to the sites. Most of the patients cannot go to the sites due to a lot of reasons. The trial should go to the patient. Maybe, I mean, the devices, all the devices for apps, mobiles, and devices should be shipped to the patients. And also, nurses can go to the patient's home to collect data. Phlebotomists can go to the patient's home and collect data. That is what decentralization of trial, where companies are now redesigning and rethinking their trials to more digitize and decentralize. So this is how patient-centric trial designing and can be achieved with more digitization, decentralization, and involving patient, right from R&D to commercial and beyond.
So,
Yeah,
so basically, we need to mix the patient understanding with all our available tools right now to design a channel between the company and the patient, a channel which allows the transmission of data from the real world without tainting it in any way by the process itself, right?
Absolutely.
yeah.
For major processes, it's a connection between the patient and the clinical side with the principal investigator. The connection, for example, can be much more frequent and much more intimate due to availability of telehealth visits and assessments. So something that the investigators will actually have more time to dedicate, to the patient and make sure, the experience with the drug or whatever it is, the subject of clinical trial. That's one very important thing. Also, development of digital technology in terms of wearables and collecting the data without practically, which directly go into overall database without any interference of third party, either patient or the clinical research coordinator and things like that. You have now even watches that measure your blood pressure and measure your blood sugar. That goes directly into safety database. There are a lot of that transmission of data is much more optimized with this new digital tools, and there are many other advantages.
So
I want to tie that to.
So there are a lot of moving parts, obviously, that need to be handled. And I want to ask Nagesh a question, and also Avik, if you want to jump in on it. Who has the responsibility of integrating all these moving parts of a patient-centric approach, Nagesh? Would a platform approach work? And if yes, can you tell us a bit about the platform approach to this?
Absolutely. More organizations are for clinical operations now. They are going towards platform approach, where they are looking for a single unified platform where they can get rid of data silos, right? That is, data silos is one of the biggest challenge, because that's where organizations are struggling to get that entire 360 view of the patient, is right from genomic profile and his behavior, his experience, all that can be achieved through a platform approach where most of the solutions in that platform talk to each other. Data sharing is seamless. That's the reason why a platform approach is required for organizations to achieve that patient-centric, holistic wellness and care.
So do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah.
Okay, because a red thing appeared on the screen. So I think this is a very good moment, because I'm also mindful of the time. If you all agree, I would like to take one question from the audience, which I think is very interesting, and it's something that could be really useful to all of our partners here. How can the level of patient centricity in my company can be measured? How can it be measured? I think this is a great question, and I think it's something that anybody from purchasing or all the people involved in such a selection process are asking. So can you please enlighten us with this information?
Sure.
Avik, you want to go first now?
There are many ways to measure that, right? And we have standard metrics that kind of evolved over the years, and we know these numbers, and that those could be the benchmark in terms of measuring how, okay, today I bring more and more of patient centricity. How does those numbers change? One quick number that comes to my mind is patient dropout, right? So if my traditional trials, the dropout rate has been X%, let's say 20%. I'm just throwing some number. Is it 15% today? Is it 10% tomorrow? Is it 5% the day after? Has that changed in the right direction? That gives me the confidence that, hey, my patient centricity is working and I'm able to measure it. That's one key. So I think there are many ways to kind of start measuring it. One of the other way could be, just patients, surveys, right? So now with all these digital technologies and ePros and, patient apps and all of that, it's very easy to send out a survey, right? How did you feel about it? How you engaged, and any suggestions for the next time. So we could get all these data in real time from the patients, and we could adjust and modify how we function, how we design our trials, and how we put that into the design thinking going forward. So all of those things could kind of help in quantifying how we are doing in terms of patient centricity.
Absolutely. To add, I mean, great points, Avik. All the KPIs metrics should be around the patient's, how the patient is feeling, the dropout rate, and also the financial impact. How that all KPIs and metrics should be around how patient is feeling, and then how is his quality of life? What was it earlier in the conventional trial, and how it is now when they have redesigned the trial with patient as the center? How much is the engagement? How much is the retention? That these are the measures which can be taken into consideration to see if organization is making progress on patient centricity.
And I would also add that all of the above, both of you guys brought very good points, but also, even accessibility of the patients for the trial. Now with the digital technologies, you can access many more potential participants, and you can optimize the enrollment and really saving some very precious time to enroll adequate number of patients. Plus, to retain them and motivate them. Motivation to retain on the trial because of the more frequent and more intimate connections between the investigator and clinical research staff and the patient is very important. Ultimately, at the end, is really, you have in real time cleaning the database, which is now much more optimized, and closing the database and practically having the results available in a very short, much shorter period of time. That's all optimizes the drug development and position the company to submit regulatory files and get the product on the market. So saving time, providing quality, these are really most important points from my perspective.
Yeah. See, one of the things I think you raised a good point, which is the time aspect of it, right? How quickly can we enroll the patients, right? Now, with these digital technologies, it opens up to a much wider audience. What it also does, it brings diversity.
Absolutely.
Right? Earlier, if I'm, let's say, enrolling patient, or my site is Stanford University or Harvard University hospitals, I'm enrolling patients in and around that neighborhood because they need to come to the hospital every few days, every few weeks, every few months. And it's difficult to go much beyond to the other demographics in the suburbs and other places. So we lacked diversity for a long, long time. We still do. And the impact of that is seen much later, in phase 3, when we go and, we realize that, okay, this is not working for this kind of demographics, not for that kind of demographics. And we still have, 90% failure rates. So I'm not saying that.
Avik, we lost you.
Avik.
Okay.
It's a conscious effort that industries have to make to.
Okay. So I think Avik was mentioning that with this patient-centric approach and digitization, decentralization, more diversity can be achieved, where the FDA is also encouraging life pharma organizations to have more diversity, because the industry, healthcare primarily, is now moving. It's one size fits all is not working. So the industry is moving towards more personalized precision medicine. For to achieve personalized precision medicines, organizations need to have the data points, complete 360 profile of the patient, right from his genomic, his behavior pattern, his food habits, and all the way he engages. All those data points are required. So that's the reason why digitization, decentralization, virtualization of trials could help achieve the future goal of more personalized precision medicines, because data points can be achieved through digitization and decentralization of trials.
They're all very interlinked, right?
Yeah.
You do one right, the other follows. You bring in digitization, virtualization, a remote monitoring, the patient centricity, all these are so very interlinked. Right? So unless, and once the industries start the journey, they will start realizing, and they are already realizing. See, COVID came, and it did put the industry in a halt for 2 quarters, I would say. But COVID hasn't gone, but we are gradually opening up, gradually starting things. So so technology is there to help, and regulators are doing a fantastic job in supporting, and with that positive mindset, and playing along, and very aggressively making things change and move to make sure that trials continue, patients get cured, new drugs come to the market. So I think exciting times ahead, and patient centricity will we'll see lot more of these going forward.
Well, COVID-19 is actually a very good opportunity. Sorry to interrupt you, Alex, too, because COVID-19 actually already we have trials, especially for patients who are not a candidate to be hospitalized, mild cases or even asymptomatic cases. They're ideal for this centralized, virtual, digitalized clinical trials. And there are a number of clinical trials right now ongoing. One at the Stanford University, in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Now, I think you mentioned a good point before, sorry, which is intimate connection, right? Even if the patient comes to the hospital, patient is on their mask and stents and trust out and all of that, and doctor is wearing a big PPE kit, and there's that in-person connection, although they are physically co-located next to each other, but they are not really connected. But if you can open that up to a virtual platform like this, I don't have a mask, the patient doesn't have a mask, we can see each other's emotions, smiles, cries, we can connect a lot more, rather than being behind the hood of a big mask and kit and all that stuff. So I think that although it is through high tech, but that high touch can still continue.
Absolutely. And to add to that, sorry, Alex.
Just one small mention. It's about trust, and trust leads to safety. And that feeling you are describing, Avik, is everybody feeling safe interacting. And I think it's something that we all need in today's context. So sorry, Nagesh, please.
Yeah, I mean, there is increased cost when there is on-site trials, right? It's not only about patient needs to travel, but he has to spend his time, effort, and at the end of the day, who pays for that? Patient pays for that, consumers pay for that. So with virtualization, digitization, all that financial benefit can be passed on to the patients, and also sponsors can leverage that availability of all their resources, everything in much more in the research, R&D, and other areas where they can improve the patient experience.
And one more thing which I realized listening to you, speaking so passionately about the subject, I realized that one of the messages we need to send to our audience is it's not just about the technology, the process, and all these little parts. It's time for a mindset change overall. You know, that's what I'm picking up listening to you on the subject. We need to change the mindset, and we need to do it top to bottom. It starts with the C-level,
bottom up.
And if the mindset is
It's
changed,
bottom up view. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I think both Susanna and Nagesh had mentioned earlier regarding it has to start at the protocol level, right? I think we all spoke about it, and a conscious thinking or rethinking of how to design the protocol right to ensure patient centricity is key, and I think it's happening, right? A very simple example. Let's say if my protocol requires 10 sites, 10 patients per site, and 10 visits per patient. So I'm talking about 1,000 visits, 1,000 hospital visits. Right? Now I go back to the drawing board, I rethink of these 1,000 visits, can I save maybe 3 visits and ensure that those can be done from the comfort of the patient home? Right? Or three, 4 visits that can be done from the patient home. A conscious thinking will help them evolve, rewrite that protocol in a slightly different way that will ensure that just for a follow-up, I don't have to come. I can do that remotely through telemedicine. Just for ensuring how I was or how I felt throughout the week, in a scale of 1 to 10, I don't have to come to the hospital, can be done remotely, right? So that conscious thinking to ensure that we bring these elements into the protocol design helps in a big way, right? And if you look at it, what that does is that 1,000 visits has suddenly 30 to 40% of those 400 visits gone. It comes back to Nagesh's point, the impact of the cost of healthcare. There's a lot of overhead if you have a hospital visit. We can just wipe that off completely, right? And ensure patient centricity, right? And ensure patient is happy, and ensure there is no dropouts, there's retention increases. So I think they're all tied up. And again, as you rightly said, it starts from the top. And I think the starting point is, getting the right team to write the right protocol that's apt for the study. It ensures all the requirements and endpoints, but at the same time, it also ensures that it can be done in a much more better way, in a different way, and helping patient at the left and right center. So.
Well, this is an excellent point to understand that even the structure of the clinical trial visits will change, most likely. They will stop to exist in a traditional way, because especially with wearables, providing a continuous collection of certain data. Not all, but certain data can be practically available to the investigator at any point of time. That's the personalization of the monitoring and the treatment. Maybe for statistical purposes, the data will be having a data snapshot, let's say on week 12 or week 24. But in interim, the investigator now is gaining a possibility to monitor in a much more refined and sophisticated way how the patient really responds to treatment, or it does not respond to treatment. Also because the connection now is much more intimate and immediate between the patient and the site and the investigator, you can increase the adaptability of the trial design to finely tune the treatment. Also to monitor how effective the trial is. If your dropout rate goes up for some reason, you can now react in much faster, much shorter way and prevent and work on the in a much better, more effective way than it was before. There's numerous advantages of this approach.
First, because I see we are nearing the end of our webinar today. First, I really want to thank you for the great answers and great points. This is very educational and on so many levels, and it shows us all of us glimpses on how the future of trials will be, you know, and I thank you for that. And I also want to please,
before, sorry to interrupt. Before we close, I just wanted to say something. Go ahead, Alex. Before we close, I just wanted to say something.
Please.
So Stephanie, here we have a trust platform. What we can being in the supporting so many clients, some of the top 5 of the top 10 pharmas and mid-sized pharmas, biotechs, and also 8 of the top 10 CROs on the clinical operations side. We understand the operational technological challenges to achieve patient centricity. So we can help organizations to design right from protocol designing with technology and planning for patient-centric trials, right from protocol designing to your submissions and engaging the patients beyond after the closeout of the trials as well. So we have that end-to-end holistic, unified, patient-centric digital platform. We'll be happy to help organizations with this.
So thank you very much, Nagesh, for sharing this. And thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Avik. And it was an incredible discussion. And I think if one of the key elements that we talked about was the mindset, and I think discussions like this have the purpose to inspire leadership in pharma companies to look for I don't know, people, experts like you, who have the ability to help them accelerate a process which is inevitable anyway, and if done properly can benefit everybody. And one more thing I want to add, which I learned and you reinforced by the things, the very interesting things you said today. It's all about trust. It's all about the patient feeling safe and comfortable. And at the end of the day, it's about helping create a partnership between the patient, the company who runs the trials, and the pharma company. It's always about this partnership. And if the foundation of this partnership is trust, and that trust is defined by every part knowing that it has the other part's interest at stake, which means the patient centricity, I think this industry will evolve faster and faster. So thank you again for participating and for the very educational discussion we had today.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, audience. Thank you. Good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.